so much for joining us. This is Ace Your Health Podcast. My name is Dr. Choksy. This is Erin Hanley. We've been talking about soil for a while, but this whole concept started here in Mason, Ohio at Ace Integrative Health. We want to garden, and this is how all of this thing started. And we've been talking about gardening for the last few weeks. You guys have joined us. You guys have been very attentive. You have asked many questions. Our previous video was about soils and different types of soils and different types of carbons and what we can do. And as part 2 of that video today, we're going to show you how we actually do it, because right now we're in October. March is coming. It's spring. And in order to have a really good summer, you need to have a really good soil. And summer harvest is dependent totally on the soil, or the spring harvest is dependent on the soil. And most of us, including myself, when we have gardened in the past, we have gone to Lowe's and Home Depot and bought a bunch of different bags worth of different soils and potted them, planted them, seeded them, done different things with them to get good, to have good plants and good growth. But there is a cheaper way, and that's what she has explained to us in our last video. Now, there is a cheaper way, there is a recyclable way. This is how we recycle earth. This is how we put our own energies into it so that we don't have to create a lot of waste that we have been doing. So going forward, looking at this world that we are in, we're creating this entire ecosystem with our own positive energies. And in this day and age today, more than ever in last 100, 200 years, maybe last 300 years, you and I both know that we have to save this planet. We have to spread our positive energy. We have to figure out how do we grow food for us. And that has been our attempt, and that is going to be our attempt to explain to you how medically we connect all of these things to us, for not only for our physical health, but for our environmental health in going forward, because this is not only for us, but it's for our generations to come. So with that in mind, let's talk about soil. And in last couple of videos, we talked about different types of soils, different words like tilled, not filled, but different amendments, like these kind of things. You think about Constitution, but they do apply in here because it's all about health of the planet, because these are the 5 elements that we're talking about. And health of these elements means health of our elements in our body. And we're made up of planet. We're going to go back into the planet. So we have to figure out how do we make both of those things healthy. And so thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And I wanted to just point out something very quickly, because I don't think I talked about this in the last class, and that is, this designing your own soils is not to make your lives any harder. And in fact, this will make your lives so much easier, because this has so much time to do its job. And by the time spring gets here, this is going to be beautiful, fertile stuff to grow your plants in. And you don't do what I've done or what most people do, and that is go out every year, buy new soil, buy new fertilizers. You just don't need to go to those lengths. So a little bit of prevention and a little bit of working in the yard right now is going to pay off big time come March, April, May of next year.
Yeah, this is the same concept that we have in our food business. With a little bit of effort, you can have a very good food that you can prep at home and not have to waste money behind fast food. You don't have to waste money behind fast soil and go out and buy it. You can have your own soil in your own house that you have made.
And you will feel so proud. And, the best gardeners that I have talked to over the years, the ones that are online and doing this kind of thing, they all say the same thing, that you will spend, if you spend 50% of your time working on the soil, it frees up so much more time down the road in terms of weeding. You'll have fewer weeds, you'll have fewer pests. The soil will be very moisture retentive. You won't need to water as much. So believe it or not, your chores in the garden are minimized just by creating soil on your own and making it nice and fertile for your plants to grow in.
That's amazing. I'm so looking forward to this, even though I've only been used to buying fast food or fast soil, but I think next year it's going to be different because we're going to do exactly this at our house.
And this is so simple. I mean, it's astoundingly simple. It's almost like, we're given all of these wonderful, abundant things, and we're just going to step in and help nature do what it's already doing. We're just going to speed that process along a little bit. That's really all that this does.
Cool, awesome. So let's get started.
Let's get our hands dirty. All right, so the very first thing that I would do, again, is line the bottom of my raised bed, or if you're going to plant right into the ground, the same method applies. You're just going to use your larger materials, things like pine cones, bark, sticks, maybe even some rock in here would be fine. We've got soil from last year. This is actually pretty decent garden soil, but it's lacking nutrients right now because the plants that were growing in here have already eaten the nutrients that are in here. And so we want to replenish the soil. So we can recycle old soil, and that's what we'll do. So the very first thing that I would do is, after applying pine cones or whatever is growing in my backyard, twigs, sticks, and the smaller these pieces, the faster they will decompose. So you might want to think about that. If you've got a wood chipper, I would suggest you use it, and if not, don't worry about it. But go ahead and layer the bottom layer with these larger items. Then I would come in and maybe put in a couple of nice scoops of soil. Yeah, and remember, there's no magic. There's nothing.
How much should we be putting in? Like
I literally just layer. Yeah, I mean, for right now, because I may come back and use some more of this, but I do want to make sure that
one inch is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Or are you just talking about drizzling on top of it?
I usually just drizzle it and eyeball it. This is like akin to making a cake. Now, obviously, making a cake.
So do you want the bottom twigs and all of these things completely covered, or?
No, it's not necessary, and that's probably enough for right now. And I'll go ahead and angle the box. So all we did was we added some soil. That's it. I didn't measure it. I don't worry about that. I used to be way more meticulous about these things, but trust me, you don't need to measure. What you do need to do is make sure that you're incorporating enough greens into the brown material so that things become activated in the box, the raised bed, or wherever you're planting, and so that the decomposition process can begin. So that is the only thing really to bear in mind. So there's different things that they call this. That you can call this sheet or lasagna style gardening. Hugelculture is a way of planting things right under decomposed matter like this. Like you literally have plants growing right on top of a mounded hill of decomposed matter. That's hugelculture in a nutshell. Some people will dig trenches around their beds or in between the beds and stuff this kind of material in between the beds. And again, it's great for retaining moisture so you're not watering all the time. And it's going to add those nutrients that the plants will continually need throughout the growing season.
Can you do this? Do you only do this in October, November timeframe?
Yeah.
Or do you do this again in springtime for fall season?
So yes, so that's a good point. That's a really, really good point. You always do want to replenish the soil after you've had something growing in it. So for example, I grew some peas. And when the peas were done, I went in and I added these kinds of materials just to boost its fertility again. You're adding these organic materials throughout the entire year if you can. It's not going to hurt what you're doing. So you can do that. But even if you only did this once in the season and then just topped it off with compost come the spring and then again maybe at the end of summer, that's probably all you're going to need. Now, I also, because we drink coffee and tea at our home, I will add the coffee grinds, the tea grinds. I will continue to add things like this that, I can't use in the kitchen, but
what is
otherwise...
something that you can, other than meats and plastics and chemicals, other than that, what are some natural things? Are there some plants or are there some other things that are natural that you just can't add to this? That is plant-based.
Okay,
right?
that's
not
yes.
animal-based, but that is plant-based things that you just can't add to this because it will mess up the soil.
I would stay away from tomatoes that catch blight. So there are certain fungal diseases that can happen with plants until that's really, really composted down, or you can even burn those things in a fire and use the ash from the burned material. That will actually provide a lot of potassium to your soil. So I'm still not going to throw away, right? I'm still not going to, I will find a use for those mottled up tomato plants, but I'm probably not going to use it in something like this. Only because there's a chance that certain diseases can thrive potentially. So I don't want to take any chances with that. I probably wouldn't use straw, for example, let's say from a farm that's been sprayed with GMO crops, or some straws can contain a lot of seeds from other plants, even manure can. So you can end up getting some funky things in your soil. So you do need to be, that's a really good question. You do need to be careful about what goes in here, but by and large, anything that's falling from the trees is a safe bet. Any sort of ground litter, as long as it's, not sludge, you don't want to obviously go towards sewage, nothing like that. And I would say the only plant materials,
like dog poop
is a no. Basically, when it comes to manures, you want vegetarians. You want your cow manure, goat manure, chicken manure. Chickens do eat other animals, but those are safe manures. Think of your farm animals. Horse manure is okay. What you want to stay away from is dog manure, because dogs can eat all kinds of things. There could be parasites in dog poop. There's certain animal manures that you do want to stay away from, but as long as you stay with your typical farm animal manures, you should be fine. Bear in mind, though, if you're going to use manure, it really should be rotted down. Well-rotted manure, which is basically compost, should not have a smell to it.
So, in terms of manure, are there timelines when you can use certain things like cow and horse?
If you use fresh manure, you're going to burn up your plants in a lot of cases. It's just too potent. It's too strong. It's full of nitrogen, and nitrogen is known for burning leaves of plants. So you really don't want to use fresh poop. You want well-composted manures. Your cow manure is not going to take probably as long to compost as in comparison to, say, horse manure, which might take months or even years. But generally speaking, if the animal is eating plants, then their manure is safe to use. Just make sure that it's going through some sort of like you can use raw manure right now. Just don't plan to plant anything in this right now.
I thought you can't use certain manures like horse manure prior to 3 years.
You will know by the smell and the texture of the manure. It's going to compost just like any other organic material.
Mm-hmm.
What you're looking for is more or less an odorless or a fresh smelling type of soil. So if it's got an odor or it's real dark brown and rich and fresh, that's fine to use now in the fall when it has plenty of time to decompose, but you do not want to use fresh manure in the spring when you're ready to plant. Or if you're going to do that, I would use very little,
Mm-hmm.
if at all. Composted manure is always going to be best.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
All right, so
What's next?
we've got our sticks, pine cones, leaves, and some dirt. Some soil from last year, which I'm going to call dirt because it lost a lot of nutrients, but still very usable. Next thing we're going to do is simply toss in some pine straw or hay or whatever you may have. Maybe you don't have any of this. Maybe you've got some other tree. You've seen those helicopters that want to fall off certain trees. Anything really that falls to the ground from trees, shrubs, other plants can be used in this process. So, that's fine. I'm just layering. Nothing really scientific about it. Now, I think it's time that we put in some green material because, again, we're trying to help this break down. And there again, I've got some pineapple tops. We're just going to scatter in there. We've got some banana peels. And notice I'm not doing anything. I could break this down, but I'm not too worried about it because I know I've got plenty of time. This is going to break down all winter long. I have some grape stems and some leaves. Romaine, just some lettuce leaves. I've got, the top part of a pepper, some peppers. So just whatever you can't use in the kitchen or you're not going to use for soup can always make soil. And then I like to use something called coconut coir. This is the skin off of coconuts. You can find these at your local. This is really the only thing I purchased out of this whole set, except maybe for this soil here, because I did buy some potting soil last year for some of my pots, but I won't have to do that this year. And I will develop areas around my home for this very purpose. And you really won't get rodents or pests if you do this right. You do need to make sure that you keep adding your green material to the brown. And I would also keep this moist. You don't need to water it down or anything, but just from time to time, especially if it's a real dry winter, you want to go out and just keep it moist. And that's plenty for the coconut coir. Now I might go back in and add some more dirt. Now that I see I got plenty of room in here. Okay, and then the final, and this is really, really important. Soil in nature is very rarely exposed by itself. So what you want to do is make sure that you cover your soil. And what I like to use is something called leaf mold. This stuff is great. Literally all I did was I took the leaves from my backyard this past year. I stored them in heavy-duty black plastic bags and put them in my garage. You don't want to put them in there real wet because then you really will get mold. You want them fairly dry, but it will turn into this beautiful, it may not look beautiful, but this is gardener's gold right here. This will make your soil so light and friable and airy. And did you know that soil is comprised of 50% minerals, 25% water, and 25% air? You want air in your soil. Otherwise, plants can't get to the nutrients. and you don't want to strangle the roots that need to reach down deep into the soil to search for nutrients. So there you have it. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. Like I said, other than water this maybe a couple of times through the season, I'm not going to do anything else to it. It will literally take care of itself. I'll add, obviously, my kitchen scraps as I go and incorporate. You don't want to leave them sitting on top. You want to actually make sure that any green material goes under the brown material. But this is a perfect system for building soil.
Wow.
And you don't need to spend hardly any money at all because chances are, unless you're in an apartment building, which I could understand, but you'd be surprised of how many farmers will give this kind of material away for free. Even down to your boards for your beds. A lot of mills and a lot of places that if they have no use for certain items, they'll be happy to give it to you.
This is awesome. So this is complete.
This is complete.
Wow. So now you have it, guys. This is layered with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, and that will make a completely brand new soil that looks like this that we showed you earlier. So, and then you can use that to plant different things. Thank you so much for showing this. We will put this whole process into a PDF as well. You will have it step-by-step instructions into the in the community. So if you're interested, join the community. There are tons and tons of videos that we're always uploading, and that's how we spread positivity. All of us stay together, stay united. And do you have any other questions?
I think that's it for today's segment.
If you have any other questions, please let us know. We'll try to address it in our next Paradise Kitchen gardening sessions, and we'll try to connect them to our health, overall health, world health, personal, mental, emotional, physical health together.
So will you grow a garden this year?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
100%.
Perfect.
Yeah. Better than last year.
All right. I believe so.
Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Take
Bye.
care.